our special guests today are going to be GovDelivery's Director of Engagement, which is Joseph. There's Joseph. And then we also have Govloop's Engagement Strategist, Lauren, and she will be presenting in just a moment as well. So Lauren, if you want to launch your presentation, I'll kind of share the screen back over onto there.
All right. So are you gonna do you want me to share my screen right now?
Sure.
Okay. Let's see. Can you see my screen?
It's still on your face right now.
Okay. Let's see here.
There we go.
All right. How does that look?
Yeah, it's good.
You
yeah.
see the presentation clearly?
Yeah, right now I see the layout version.
Okay, good.
Okay.
So I'll take it away. Well, thanks for everyone for joining on a Thursday night. As Elliot said, we're going to be talking about what motivates an online community, and I'm going to do this in tandem with my co-partner, Joseph. So I'll just jump right in here. Let's see, since we were already introduced, I'll just go on to the next slide. So I thought it'd be kind of helpful to just give a very brief background about motivation that psychologists and sociologists have researched over the last couple hundred years. So I just have a couple of people here who have kind of dedicated their life to figuring out what motivates people. The first one is Maslow, which everyone is probably familiar with, his hierarchy of needs, with the most basic needs at the bottom, obviously, and the more elite needs at the top. And obviously, as we have our needs satisfied, we can kind of move along to the more who's typing? Oh, okay. We can move along to the more advanced needs as we kind of go up the this triangle here. The next person I kind of thought would be interesting to just review is Skinner, who had his whole theory in people are motivated by rewards. And there is also his belief in reinforcement and punishing, with reinforcement being an increase in the likelihood that a behavior is repeated, and then punishment being a decrease in behavior being repeated.
Hey Lauren, sorry to break in real quick. Oh, there it goes. Okay, the slide wasn't showing up. You're good.
Okay. I think it may just be a delay.
Okay.
Okay. Hold on. Jump back here. Yeah, there might be a slight delay, but I should be on the Skinner slide here.
Yep. Yeah, it's there. Okay.
So, so reinforcement, and punishment, his whole kind of theory that he came up with over the years, and just an example of one. So, a negative reinforcement would be if a parent had a kid who was screaming, you'd give the kid candy, which was obviously something that would be negative, but he would be reinforcing that. So, the next person is not as well known, and he had this whole idea that there are 16 basic desires that guide human behavior, which is the major driver for motivation. I'm not going to go through all of these because you can obviously read these later on, or you can kind of scan through them now, but his idea was that there are all these basic drivers that are the foundation for why humans are motivated. And let's see, the last guy that I thought I'd kind of go through quickly had this idea of self-efficacy to describe motivation. And his idea is that, you may already understand this principle here, but essentially self-efficacy, if someone has high self-efficacy, they believe that they'll be able to complete a task no matter what. If the person's self-efficacy is lower than his ability, then they probably won't be motivated to try in the first place. But if their efficacy is actually higher than their ability and they fail, then that will lead to a decrease in motivation going forward. So those are just some of the most basic theories that people have spent hundreds of years sort of formulating, and I think all of these principles, when you take them together, it kind of presents this next slide here, which I kind of sketched out. This is a pretty basic, sort of a basic framework here, but I think if we kind of go through this quickly, I think it kind of gets to what we're really talking about here with online communities. So if you kind of look on the left, there's and these are kind of pulled from all these different people who have been doing this over the years. So intrinsic motivation would be things like, and if you think about it in the context of an online community, intrinsic motivation would be things like self-fulfillment, self-expression, altruism, pleasure of sharing, curiosity, and then that would be for typically more of like of an introverted personality. And then the extrinsic motivation would be things like giving someone a reward for doing something in a community, or recognizing them, or that person thinking they have influence over other people, etc. So the motivation is obviously, lies within the person themselves. If you then take that and you add to that support, and the supports are actually things that are coming from probably the community manager. So if you add someone's own motivation to someone sort of helping them along and making the community more engaging, and through like realizing what is working and not working in the community, those two things together are going to kind of give you your maximum likelihood that engagement will happen with someone. So then what you do is you subtract from that the major obstacles that you have in the community. Let's say you're motivated to join a community. The community manager is there sort of helping to reinforce that, but there's obstacles like you just don't have time to do it, or you don't have access to the technology you need. You might not really understand how a community works, and so that kind of prevents you from joining or participating. And then if you kind of add those together and then subtract obstacles, that's where you get your sort of your engagement quotient. And Joseph and I sort of came up with this idea a couple days ago, where engagement is really a meaningful and valuable action that produces a measurable result. So that's sort of the goal of the community at the end of the day, and this is kind of a quick little formula you can think about in terms of how to figure out how much engagement you're going to get at the end. Can you see my next slide here? It has a red box.
It looks like it's on the Skinner slide still.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Lauren, can you try and put the presentation not in like editable mode, like show mode, or I don't even know what to call that. That might help.
Okay, what can you see right now?
Now it's on the motivation slide, but I think you need to actually click on it for Google Hangout to follow along.
Yeah,
So
if you hit screen share, you might have to select a different option on there.
Uh-huh. What can you see now?
It's the layout view, and it's on the motivation page.
Okay. Well, why don't we,
This
Why
is
don't we-
fine if we do it this way too.
yeah, if this is going to make it I don't know why it's having a delay with the full screen. So why don't we just keep it in the layout format?
Sure. Okay, this is fine.
And actually, if Joseph wants to kind of jump in here, this is a good place for him to kind of talk through the next 2 or 3 slides.
Okay.
Sure, thanks. And can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, Lauren took a lot of time to actually create this presentation, so I just want to acknowledge her and thank her for putting all the time into this. And, so far there's been a lot of kind of theory here, but the theory is real important. And the reason that I say that is that there's lots of folks trying to create all different kinds of online communities, and just like designing like a playground or a park or an office building or whatever it is that you're thinking that where people are going to congregate, it really takes a lot of thought beforehand, and you really need to have a solid understanding of what's going to motivate people to participate. And when you think about motivation, you have to think about what kind of interactions you want people to take. And oftentimes, especially dealing with social media, people think like, oh, we want to have like 1,000 fans or 1,000 followers or 1,000,000 followers. They haven't really thought about what it is that they want people to do while they're there. And so on the previous slide that Lauren just reviewed, it's really important that we think about what are the meaningful and valuable actions that produce a measurable result that we want people to take. Because often that is not thought about, and it leaves people feeling dissatisfied. It leaves people feeling disrespected, and it makes them feel like they're really just a commodity, and their intellect and their ability to contribute really hasn't been acknowledged. So understanding all of the sort of the academic approach is really important to do. So if you're not familiar with these frameworks, I really suggest you spend some time looking at them. Now, let's talk in plain English here for a second. So really, what is motivation? And this is a definition that we're working on and we're figuring out, as Lauren mentioned earlier. But this is kind of what we boiled it down to in 1 second. So it's really what's in it for me, for people or organizations that I care about that doesn't already exist. So for example, I went to a networking event earlier this evening called Tech Cocktail here in DC, and I've been working in DC for 2 years, but I've only lived here for 5 months. So what motivated me to go there that didn't already exist was meeting new people in the tech industry in Washington, DC. So for me, it was connections, relations, and I wound up learning about this new company doing this really cool work. That was fun because I'm a curious person and I like to learn about things. So later on today, we'll share some specific examples of online communities that we manage or have worked on and sort of walk you through this. But just take a second to think to yourself, what motivates you to participate in different places? And keep in mind that online is very similar to offline. The difference is we're having a human being, we're human beings having a human experience interacting with each other in person. And when we talk about online communities, we're really interacting and participating, contributing through online mediums, right? So it's very, very similar. So Lauren, if you could go to the next slide here, important notes on online communities. I'm actually looking at the presentation myself, so it looks like you've got that up. That's great. There's a couple things that we want you to keep in mind. The first one is don't make assumptions. Assumptions are really not going to serve you any purpose. Even though you feel really strongly about it or you've got an inclination that you might be right, it's really important to understand what people need, what their interests are, what their habits are, and what their preferences are. So needs and interests could be very basic to, like tonight I wanted to connect with people and my interests were, I didn't really walk in with one, but I was interested in having, interesting conversations or perhaps constructive dialogue. Now my habits are, where I hang out, what I do, where I'm already spending time or I'm investing time. My preferences are perhaps like what times I'm there or specific channels that I might go to. So it's important to understand what those are. So as you go through, you're at the right place at the right time and can meet people where they are, if that makes sense. And then when you have that understanding, it's very important to align your strategies and tactics in support of motivating people given the findings that you already know, right? So tonight for this event that I went to, there was, I think, 1,000 people that registered and paid to go to this event, and that's kind of unheard of. People paying a lot of money to, I mean, it wasn't a lot of money, it was $20, I guess not so much in DC, but a lot of people came. So they were very smart about their design, understanding needs, interests, habits, and preferences, and then were very smart about how they executed their strategies and tactics, which produced the results to get people to come to this particular event. So let's go ahead on to the next slide, which is the engagement funnel, before I turn it back to Lauren. Now this framework here is how we guide our clients to think about how or what stages or phases that they're going to walk people through in terms of engagement. And the first one is awareness. Awareness is it exists, it's out there, I found it, someone told me about it, and I'm encountering it for the first time. Maybe the second time. It might be, for example, a blog or a website, or maybe like as an offline example, like a restaurant that you're walking by, like on your way home from work, for example. Now, permission is really like acquisition or conversion, right? I've said I really want to go, so the restaurant is you step inside, right? Or a website is you're clicking through to a certain page, or an online community is you're creating a profile. Orientation has to do with familiarizing yourself with what's going on. And a good example of this is like a party. When you go to a party, if you show up, you walk in, no one talks to you, and you're sitting there by yourself, with your back to the wall, not having a good time, you're like, this experience stinks. Now, if someone guides you through the process and introduces you to some of their friends, shows you where the bathroom is, where the bar is, where the snacks are, so on and so forth, you're going to have a much better experience. And the same goes with online communities. So given whatever the purposes of the community, being familiarized with how different features are being used, what conversations people are having, and how to contribute and how to participate. Number 4 here is engagement, and this is, I think, probably what's most interesting to the people who are watching. These are sort of the micro and the macro actions that people are taking in the community that contribute, that help fulfill the desire of their motivation, right? So it could be contributing a blog post or commenting on a discussion or watching something or whatever, like micro or macro actions. Distinction between the micro and the macro, we think of micro as like easier to do, like lower thresholds, such as leave a comment or share something or like something. Macro being contributing thoughtful content or taking time to do something that takes longer than a split second. And then number 5, which is leadership, is really where people are co-creating or co-organizing towards a common vision. So these are the folks that are helping to facilitate a conversation or a group, or, for example, bringing people together for an event offline, or representing your organization, your cause, your group in a way that requires commitment above what we described earlier. And so I guess at this point what I'll do is turn it back to Lauren.
Okay. So I'm just going to jump back to the slide that I believe did not show, and then I'm going to kind of review quickly how to think about some of the motivating factors in the context of the next few slides that I'm going to go through. And those slides are tactical ways to actually engage your community. So I'm just going to jump back here. So can you see this slide now? It should be motivation engagement at the top.
Yeah, it's showing up.
Okay. So what I was trying to show before, this is the formula that we are kind of working through right now. And if you look on the left under motivation, there's intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. So these are pretty basic concepts that have been collected through reading about a lot of different psychologists and sociologists that I've studied over a period of time. But if we jump back to the slide, let's see here. Okay, so this is the first slide I wanted to kind of use to give people some really tactical ways to motivate people in their online community. So the first one, and I think there's probably 8 of these tactics. So the first one is content. And this is something that Govloop does exceptionally well and spends an enormous amount of time trying to think about what content can it feature and create and promote and help the people who are interested in blogging in the community. What is the content that is going to be most interesting to other people? So here on the left here under content, one of the first things to motivate people, one of the first things you can do is actually try as a community manager is try as hard as you can to respond to as much content as possible. That's going to basically tap into someone's who might be putting something out there as a new member, for example. If you reinforce with them that their ideas are valuable and worthwhile to the community, that's going to really motivate them to try something in the future and continue. So respond to as much content of your members as possible. Another quick tip is to cross-post member content. If you see a member who's writing a topic that might be interesting to someone else, then you should cross-post that, because that'll sort of spread the idea to people who are most interested in it. And then, of course, just make the content engaging. And there's tons of different ways to make the content engaging. You could have a regular blog topic or series that you run. You could feature a community partner of the week. You could feature a project of the week. videos, photos, anything you can to think about what is really interesting to these people and why are they going to come back. The next one is to, in terms of motivating people, communicate as much as you can. If you have a community where you only send out maybe an email once every couple of months, then people are not going to even really remember why they're part of your community, and that's not going to motivate them to feel like they're part of something that's worthwhile. At Govloop, there's actually, if you're signed up for Govloop, you probably get the daily awesome newsletter, and in that newsletter, there's a whole number of tactics that they use to motivate people. But the key here is to really remember you need to communicate frequently. The third way is to think about groups as a way to have people who want to feel like they're a specialist in a large pond. Feel like they're a big fish in a small pond. So groups are a great way to get people to feel like they're kind of a thought leader on a certain topic. And hold on a second here. Joseph, are you chatting me?
That's all right. It's too late.
Okay. And then another way to motivate people is to use in-person activities, because we all know, just like Joseph said, he was going to the tech cocktail, he met some people, that is going to strengthen the bonds with him and other people and in that community. So in-person activities are a wonderful way to do that. Number 5 is recognition. People love to be recognized and sort of called out if that's one of the ways that they're motivated. So think about highlighting a member of the week, or just put someone in a newsletter who's done something awesome. Number 7 is leaderboards. Leaderboards are for people who are motivated through competition. That's an incredibly useful way to get people to kind of increase their participation. And then finally, the rewards. Just like we all like to get stickers as children when we completed our math tables or whatever, it's amazing how much we can be motivated by simple rewards. And then Joseph and I are going to kind of and Joseph can take a stab at this first, but there's 3 examples of communities, 2 of which, he was one of the major original founders and promoters of. So I'm going to let him take it away from here and talk about some real life examples.
Cool. So Lauren, did you want me to talk about Govloop, or were you going to talk about it?
Yeah, why don't you talk about Govloop, because I've been talking a lot.
Cool. So Govloop is a social network that was started by our friend Steve. And Steve started Govloop at the time he was working for the Department of Homeland Security, and he wanted to be able to connect with other people who worked in government who were trying to solve problems similar to him, or similar to the ones that he was trying to solve. And in government, there's a lot of bureaucracy that prevents the use of social media, especially 3 years ago. And so he thought that if he created this network, he could share what he'd learned, but also get other people to help him solve problems that they perhaps have already made progress on. So his motivation really was around connection and sharing best practices, and as he says, getting it done and making government more awesome. So he launched Govloop in, I think it was 2008, and it's grown to over 55,000 members now. And folks are having all different kinds of conversations on a number of topic areas, and it is the knowledge network for government. And people join Govloop for lots of different reasons. Some of the main ones that we know about are people want to share best practices, they want to advance their career, they want to get a sense of what what others are working on who work in their field. And folks are also just curious and want to have a more social experience in the sector that they're working in. And Lauren, if you could go to the next slide for me, please. So this community here is actually a community that we developed and manage for FEMA, for the National Preparedness Month Coalition. And it is out, it's called community.fema.gov, and they had a couple goals. for National Preparedness Month, what they're looking to do was to bring who they call stakeholders, which are folks who run community organizations and churches together to help get the word out about National Preparedness Month, to help Americans prepare for natural and man-made disasters. And since FEMA has only so many folks in the field, the best way to do that is to connect the connectors, to bring all the organizers together, train the trainer. And so they created this collaboration network run on the GovDelivery collaboration platform. And essentially what they wanted to do was get, I think, like 4,000 or 5,000 people registered on the site, get them sort of their training kit, connect them to each other so they can share the best practices that they know and help each other, help motivate and continue to motivate each other over the duration of the campaign, which lasts, I think, about 6 months in total, preparing up and leading to National Preparedness Month in September. And they actually had a phenomenal success this year. 9,000 partners registered, and we were preparing earlier for this presentation, and what we concluded was the majority of people registered because they cared about people in their community, wanted to have access to those who have the knowledge, the subject matter experts on preparation, but also connect to those who are also doing similar work, because there's direct and indirect values to participating. Direct values are getting access to information, getting access to FEMA personnel. Often folks are looking for people to come speak at their community association or their neighborhood meetings. It's a great way to connect to those folks. But also, the indirect is really kind of collaboration and camaraderie around the work. Most of my experience, and you'll see in the next slide, is around neighborhood and community organizing. And so it's a lonely, not many people say thank you for the work that these folks do. So having sort of that, bunch of rowboats tied together where you can look around and see that you're not the only person doing a lot of this work on your own time, especially for free, in the neighborhood and the community organizations is a real motivation. So that's some of the reasons why people participate here. And Lauren, if you go to the next slide for me. The network that you're looking at now is called neighborsforneighbors.org, and it's a social network that connects neighbors to each other and those who serve them, such as police officers and neighborhood liaisons in the city of Boston. It's the first social network of its time, launched it in 2007. And people join Neighbors for Neighbors for the following reasons. They want to be connected to each other. They want to know what's going on in their neighborhood. They want to find out where they can plug in. And they want to do things together. And they want to do things together, usually for social activity reasons, like they want to read together, they want to go running together. But when things don't go so well in the neighborhoods, like crime or something's going on, like a development project, neighbors need an infrastructure and wanted an infrastructure to come together, to have their voices be heard, but to coordinate and organize around taking action that would, again, produce a measurable and valuable result, such as stopping the development of like a chain pizza store that came into our neighborhood, which we stopped, or crime sprees where we had a number of shootings and assaults very quickly, but because we were able to mobilize 1,000 people to take action at once, we could immediately put a stop to it. And so that sort of concludes some of the things that we've done, the practical examples.